We all know that the right habits and mindsets can be transformational in how we live our lives. But among the sea of advice online, it can be challenging to know who to trust with these important life decisions. At The Standard, we answer those questions and introduce you to some of the most successful people in the world in their fields and the habits and the mindsets they use to achieve their success. To learn more about our social platform, head on over to www.thestandardapp.com. And now, your host, myself, Chris Palatroni. Welcome to another episode of The Standard. I am your host, Chris Palatroni, and today's guest is Rod Cooper. He is an entrepreneur. He is the owner of TMC, the Movement Collective out of Australia. He's just a phenomenal person. Ironically, today, recording this will come out later in November, but it is the date we're recording this. I met Rod 2 years ago to this exact date. That was not planned. That's just the irony of scheduling this with him. But such a cool guy. We talk a lot about his background, why he started the Movement Collective, the way he works with his clients, the culture that he's created, and some of the ups and downs, if you will, in being an entrepreneur, especially through COVID, where he runs a brick and mortar building. So that was really fun. And the reason we wanted to focus on that is I feel like, not everybody does their dream job, but Rod loves movement. And I felt like diving into his professional background was a great way to sort of set the stage, if you will, to who he is as an individual. And so we spent a little bit of time on that. And then we dive into his best habit. I guessed it. I'll let you use your imagination, but we dive into his habit and why he does that and the benefits that he receives from it. And what happens if he doesn't practice it on a daily basis. And then we sort of migrate our way over to mindset. And he talks about just doing the best job that you can. And he shares some other words of wisdom that have really helped him be the best person that he can be. Really interesting guy. If you get a chance, you should absolutely follow him on Instagram. He has phenomenal movements out there that I think are just so playful and so practical, and really just, as he'll tell you a little bit about his story, just teaches us to appreciate the body, which is a lot of what he's trying to get across, help build confidence in people and whatnot. So really enjoyed this episode. And so without further ado, I want to welcome Rod Cooper. So super excited to have you on. I mean, as I said, it's been a couple of years. You were so kind enough to share some of your personal habits for the platform we're building. I decided to build a podcast and really take advantage of all of these amazing people I've met around the world. And so I think you're the first person out of Australia, although I've got one more lined up. And really, at least in this first season, is just bringing aboard coaches in all different disciplines. A lot of them are coaches, so nutrition, yoga, fitness, movement, you pick it, and really just exploring their personal habits and their personal mindsets and sort of the things that have contributed the most to your success. So you've shared about 6 videos. Clearly, you wear so many of your habits right on you. You're in great shape. You run the Movement Collective. So I'm excited to see where you take this. I'm speculating. I think I know where you might go, but you never know. You could surprise me. But what I'd love to do, Rod, maybe to start off here, because I think a lot of people won't have quite the context that I do about your background. I'd love you to just take a couple of minutes and just share a little bit about you and your professional background. I saw in here that I didn't know you used to be a qualified chef. I know you said that was a past life, but I'd love to hear a little bit about who you are and what you do, and then also why the Movement Collective.
Cool. Yeah, so I put that in there because, it does feel like a few lifetimes ago. But when I left school, I became a chef and I worked in that industry for about 6 years, and very different to the industry that I'm in now, very fast paced, quite high stress. And it was good to learn those skills. It's really nice to have the skills of cooking, being able to chop really fast. And after that, I moved into the brewing industry, and I was working for a company called Blue Tongue here in Australia for about 6 years. And then I moved over to Canada and I spent about 2 years there. And at that time, that's when I started to learn about movement. I started training with Ido Portal for online coaching and a bunch of different things there. And I was training at a facility over there as well, with a background in kind of CrossFit for 2 years, and then just training sort of like the general bodybuilding style training, going to the gym, trying to look good. And so I guess, that was the spark of the movement journey for me. When I moved to Canada, I started moving with all these guys that were doing hand balancing and break dancing and this kind of just this world opened up for me when I moved there, and that's when I came up with the ideas to open the Movement Collective.
Yeah. Starting a business is no small feat. Like, I mean, it and I think some people, I don't know if they take it for granted or whatnot, but, like, I recognize, like, how hard it is to build a company. I'm so curious, like, obviously, there's a love that you have for movement and sort of weaving all of these sort of different disciplines together, but why start a company? Like, why and you don't even just have, like, a company, like, you actually have a physical building
Mm.
people come into. You're not just like, I mean, I don't know if you do any virtual stuff, but so many coaches these days are doing the virtual, and I can understand that low overhead, maybe lower risk. But you have a brick and mortar building. So talk to me a little bit of like, why'd you go down that road?
I guess nothing really existed. So I started TMC about 8 years ago in 2015, and there wasn't anything that really existed. So I couldn't, join another gym or start training for someone else. The thing that I wanted to create didn't exist here in Australia or anywhere in the world, really. So I decided to, the way that I started was to try to minimize the risk as much as possible. And basically, I knew a friend who was running a facility already. And I asked him if we could use some of their space because I came up with the ideas when I was in Canada. I was moving back to Australia, had all these grand ideas that I was going to start up this movement collective and had no business experience previously, like chef background, then into the professional brewing, no business experience whatsoever, just trying to learn as much as I could before I actually started when I came back to Australia. And I think I started within a week. I came home and I think I got my first aid certificate. I did my Cert 3, Cert 4 in fitness to get that for insurance while I was
Mhm.
brewing. So I remember I was like over there working, but I had all these like this passion and this motivation and these ideas to open the Movement Collective when I came back to Australia. I kind of had this long list of things that I needed to do and to put in place. So when I came back, I could get started immediately. So I came back and I asked my mate who owned a facility already, and I said, "Hey, I want to start this thing up. It's going to be really small. I just want to do one-to-one sessions. I'm just going to just use a little corner of your gym. Like I just want to use a little bit of the rig. I'm going to buy some rings and some boxes, and slowly over time, when money allows it, I kind of put all my savings into this and kind of borrowed some money from my dad as well to get started. And from there we just started to build up. I was doing one to ones. I decided to do workshops. And that was the idea. Like the business plan for me, I had it all laid out and I was going to do one to one sessions because I felt like what I wanted to teach was very individual and everyone's got individual bodies and individual experience and individual needs. And I wanted to work with them one to one. But then when I ran the workshop, this first workshop that I ran, I was like 2 weeks into running the business, I had like 25 people show up. And then I did one the following weekend and another 25 people showed up. And it was massive. I was like, all right, there's something in this. So from that moment, it was about 2 weeks in, I basically scrunched up my business plan and threw it in the bin. And I decided to run classes. I started with like a Monday session in the afternoon and then added a Wednesday and then a Friday. And then I decided that I would start to do some sort of subscription base memberships. So I started to create this membership base where people would, sign up for a week membership. They would pay a weekly subscription and there was classes available to them. And I started to shift from doing one-to-ones to doing classes. And over time, we started to outgrow that space. It was pretty funny, actually. It was a boot camp and very different to the style that we're training. So they're doing their circuit work and we're doing spinal waves and doing lizard crawls and doing stuff on the rings. And I could always
Wow.
see like, them looking out the corner of their eye, like, what are these guys doing in the corner? So we started to grow and we outgrew that space actually within sort of 6 months to 12 months. And we looked for our own facility. There was one just around the corner, like literally on the same block. It was about 200 square meters. So we decided to move into there. And at the time, we had about 30 members. So it was enough for, I guess, safety and security to take the business to the next level. Like I knew that it had huge potential and it was a big risk for us to jump from having, really minimal overheads to having our own facility. So that was kind of a scary moment in my career as a business owner, but it paid
Yeah.
off. And I feel like there's been these stories sort of reoccurring throughout my career in owning TMC, where there's this element of trust that comes into it. I've got all these different ideas, plenty of ideas, and then it's like implementing the ideas and trusting myself that it's going to work out, and it always does. There's always these ups and downs, but it always, that vision or that plan always, yeah, always arrives.
Now is it 9 years or 10 years? Like, how long has it been in play?
8 years now.
It's 8 years.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. So you're well past the startup phase. You've built something that's meaningful. I guess, like, I know that we'll get into your habits here in a minute, but, like, as a business owner, you sort of mentioned this idea of, like, there's this concept of, like, ideation to creation, right? Like, there's a lot of business owners. We got plenty of ideas. I mean, notebooks, endless. I mean, we're all there, but you actually got to take action. Like, you got to deploy something. And so you're mentioning this idea of trusting yourself. And I'm so curious, like, fear of failure comes into this. Like, you've got a family at this point, it's your livelihood. Now you've got a baby. Like, how have you been able to navigate this idea of trusting your intuition and balancing that up with, I guess, just like fear and maybe apprehension of, like, you're not a young boy who started a company anymore. Like, you're a man running it. You've got a family to support. Like, how do you reconcile that at this point, and keep pushing the business forward?
Yeah, I guess trust is the big thing, is like trusting yourself that you'll be able to pivot and adapt. I think that's the biggest thing that comes from the movement practice as well. Like we work on flexibility. And I feel like that within terms of like the
Mm,
physical ability to
yeah.
become flexible and pliable and adaptable, that also transfers so well to the business. And if
Mm,
you can do that, if you can lead into these things with ideas, like these great ideas, like you said, we've all got these amazing ideas. I've got like a long list of ideas I would like to implement with inside the business. And it's like taking the ones that you feel like, are true to you and true to your character and that are going to serve the community the best. And you just roll with it. But then you're always going to come up with failure, like you said. And in that moment, what do you do? Like, do you give up or do you pivot? And I always pivot. I understand that failure is a part of the process and you can't have success without failure. It's like two sides of the same coin. So I understand that I'm working towards something and then I might hit, there's a spanner in the works or something happens and I need to shift and adapt and move in the next direction. So I try not to take step backwards. I try to look to see where can we keep sort of moving forward or even take a side step and then look at the
mm.
next thing and how can I gain the knowledge that I need, but then also implement and embody the things like take action, like you said, on the ideas that I'm having and constantly be moving and adapting. And I feel like if you've got that approach with inside your movement practice, with inside business, relationships, life, then you can always be moving forward.
I love the idea that you said it's your movement practice has a lot of application to the business, and that makes so much sense in hindsight. I don't know why I didn't see that coming, but it makes a lot of sense for you. I'm so curious. Like, so you're 8 years in the business. Let's roll back to 2020. COVID hits. And I don't know what it was like where you're at. I've heard some rumors, but I'm not obviously from that area. That, how did that affect your practice? I mean, your business was built off of bringing people in your building, right?
Yeah.
You're a 5-year-old company. So what was that like for you to, like, navigate that first year?
So after we built, so it was about 12 months in, we got that new facility, about 200 square meters. We then outgrew that facility. So
Yeah.
then we need to upgrade again. So the current building that I'm in now is about 800 square meters and we've fully decked it out. We've got a cafe running, we've got osteopaths, we've got saunas upstairs. Like it's a
Okay.
full kit out. I don't know if on social media you get a full picture of it, but it's this huge building with
Yeah.
massive, massive overheads. So again, there was a huge jump with inside the business and this trust that came into it, jumping from that facility where we could survive with say 30 to 70 members. And then the next big jump was this huge commitment. It's about say 75 grand per year just for the rent and not including any of the other
Yeah.
overheads. So we needed to have about 100 members to make that work. And we only had about 60 members at the time. So again, there was a
Mm,
huge jump to move to this facility. But over the years, I think there was about 2 years in this facility before COVID came, we were able to build up to about 136. And that was our
oh,
highest
wow.
member base, which was amazing. And that's just adults as well. We've got a full kids program. It's called TMC Kids. And TMC Kids has been up to about 250 kids members. At the moment, it's about 230 or something like that. So the kids business
Yeah.
is bigger than the adults. It's really
Yeah.
amazing. And yeah, so we tried to, yeah, we just, again, just trusted into the space and then we grew it, kept following our intuition and following the path. And then COVID hit. Massive, massive hit on the business. Actually, even before that, we were planning to open up in Melbourne. We had people wanting to invest in TMC and open up multiple facilities, create some sort of franchise model. Like all these ideas were popping up and we had it all flowing and the energy was really high. And then, yeah, COVID came and we had to basically stop running classes. There was full lockdowns here in Australia. Victoria got it way worse. I think they were locked down for months at a time, but we were locked down for a period of time and then it opened back up and then locked down again. So basically, couldn't go out of the house, couldn't run our business. We tried to do online. So we tried to again pivot and shift, adapt into online training, but that only really lasted for so long. What we've created here is this physical space where people can turn up and they can connect with themselves, their own body, and also other people. And following, Zoom videos and things like that, it only goes so far. And after about 3 weeks, we had a lot of people start to drop off and say, "Hey, like, I just want to go outside and walk and do these things." And we were like, fair enough. Like, we're sick of the computer as well. Like we understand and we get it. But we did lose a lot of members. We held on to a few, and there was a lot of our members just stayed with us because they believe so much in myself, my wife, Jenny, who runs a business as well, and the community of TMC. So a lot of people basically messaged us and said, "Hey, like, we're going to stay on board. We just want to support you guys." So I'm just so
That's
thankful
great.
that, yeah, we had the community supporting us because we were still paying rent. We got a bit of a rent reduction, I guess, for the facility, but the money coming in versus money going out was not good to look at for a long period of time.
Yeah.
And then what happened? The government basically said that, on this date you can start back up. But because it was such a long period of people, not training and people's lives changed, people lost their jobs. Like it was just really hard for a lot of people, change their habits. We lost a lot of members and it actually took such a long period for us to build back up. And only recently in the last couple of weeks have we reached beyond where we were before COVID. So it's taken, I didn't
Yeah.
even know when that date was, when the government said, "Cool, you can start up." It's taken that long for us to build up to that point. So we took a massive, massive hit. But again, I'm just so thankful of like our team and the community for supporting us through that and for continuing to give themselves the time and the effort to come in and train and support themselves.
Yeah, I got a couple more questions on your business just because I feel like your company is so much an embodiment of who you are as a person. Obviously, movement is such a fundamental practice in so many ways. I think when I've interviewed all these people, I think this will be the 33rd episode. And I want to say like at least 5 or 6 people, daily movement is like the top habit. So clearly a really important part. When I look online, and I'm not pretending this is a full representation of the way you guys run it, there's so many weird movements that are happening out there. When I say weird, weird in like such a positive way, but to your point, lizard crawls and spinal waves and like, I mean, it's just not. I think what I would even think of is just like movement. Like there just seems to be so much creativity in the way that you're going about it. And I guess my question for you is, where are you coming up with this stuff? Like, how are like? I mean, I'm seeing some of it, and I'm like, that is so interesting. And I can actually like, without you telling me, I can sort of like connect the dots of like, wow, like if my body can move like that, my body probably can't move like some of this stuff here. But I imagine if it could, like how much younger I might feel. Where are you drawing inspiration? Where are you coming up with some of these movements? And maybe, I guess, I don't know if you call them lessons or what you call them, but how are you coming up with this course, if you will?
Yeah, I guess it's coming from a few different avenues, but the first one is I really see the body as a gift. I feel like we've been put on this earth with this body that's so capable of and so much potential as well. So I'm all about that, about exploring my potential. And I really only started this when I was 27. I'm 38
Yeah.
now. It's been just over 10 years of me practicing this. And throughout the years, I've been able to develop myself starting from wherever I was with each one of these different elements and understand the process of like just practicing these skills and developing. And a lot of the inspiration comes from that, from me understanding that, I am getting older and at one point I'm not going to be able to move. And I want to utilize this gift that we've been given and move through its full potential. And I really see there's just so much motivation for me in that, like waking up every day and thinking like, what can I do with my body each day? And it's not about going 100% each day and like, drilling myself. Sometimes it's really soft, like you've seen, like the spinal waves. It's like trying to connect and understand like how is the spine kind of undulating and moving, and how can I improve that movement and make myself feel better? Because just like everyone, I
Yeah.
go through stages of having like back pain and like sore joints and all this stuff. And then it's just like, instead of having the excuse or just whinging about it, which I can do as well as like most people, there's ways that we can move and to articulate our body and to heal it and to make us feel better each day, not only working towards the potential and looking like the performance element, but it's like, how do
Yeah.
we allow ourselves to feel good in our body each day? Because we only get one body. We can't trade it in and get a new one. We've got this body, so we need to look after it and also to play with that potential. I think that's really motivating for me. Another avenue that I get inspiration from is just simply Instagram or YouTube, other people moving in the space. I see videos pop up. I'm like, oh, that's cool. And I'll give it a go and I'll fail and fail and fail until eventually I get it. And then other things can come from this as well. It's like this curiosity or this playfulness is a big part of our practice. And what can happen if you fail, you potentially can come up with new moves. So it's not a complete
Mm.
waste of time. It's like I failed something, but I came out, like, say, if I'm doing like an acrobatic movement, I fall out of it, but then I land in a position that I hadn't landed in before. It wasn't correct, but there's something in that. And then I can tinker and play with that and then come up with new ideas. So, yeah, there's definitely this inspiration coming from people with inside the facility, people that are moving that I see online. And yeah, just practicing and playing and leading into it with this curious nature.
Yeah, I have to imagine, and once again, not in your studio clearly, but with some of the ways that you are moving, and maybe even some of the activities that other people are sort of putting themselves. I think you even mentioned it when we first started, of like maybe in these like awkward positions, and people are sort of looking like there's a fair amount of vulnerability to like start moving yourself in some really, I don't want to say unnatural because I don't think I mean it quite that way, but just in a way that maybe you haven't done before that may catch the eye. And so I feel like because of that, the members that you have, like these aren't people that are just signing up to go to a gym. Like this is like, I have to imagine this is much more of a community centric people that you have there, be it the kids or be it the adults. And I'd love you to touch on, maybe as a last question before we segue into your personal habits here, is what is your aspirational hope for the people that come to your studio? Like what, like, sure, you love movement. I get that. You're in great shape. You push your boundaries, but what is the hope for when people come and they sign up and they become part of your community? Like, what is your hope for them?
Oh, there's so many things, but the thing that comes up most is like trust and belief in themselves. Because a lot of people
Mm,
come in and there's this idea of like, yeah, this movement's awkward, it's unusual, it's weird, but it's only because we've practiced certain things and those things have become normal. I was really thinking about this the other day. We're doing the lizard crawls and the spinal waves, and I really see the body as like it's capable of all these different things, and I see all of it as normal. But
yeah.
because of the fitness industry and the way that we've developed, there's this box of what we consider to be normal. So it's really interesting when people come into this space and we're doing all this weird stuff, but this becomes the new normal. Someone
Mm,
put into the group the other day, they were sitting down waiting for their kid in the class, and one of the people that was sitting next to her like kind of nudged her in the shoulder and just said, "Hey, like what's this guy doing?" There was a guy, one of our teachers, flowing around on the ground, just like rolling around, doing all this like glow work. And she was like, "What is this guy doing?" He's like rolling around the ground. It's so weird. And our member was sitting there and she's like, "Oh, I didn't even notice." So it becomes, the new
gotcha.
normal. Yeah. So it's like, it depends on what you're exposed to. For us doing, handstands or seeing people hold freestanding handstands, one arm handstands, whatever it is, it becomes just something that we see every single day. And I understand that it can be awkward because I go into other spaces, even out in public sometimes, and it's like, whoa, like especially at other gyms, even actually stretching at other gyms. It's so welcomed here and we just do it all the time. It's so natural for us to be stretching and moving in this way. But if you go to a normal gym, sometimes there's, like a commercial gym, when I say normal, there's no space. There's all these equipment sort of lined up and there's no space to even stretch. So if you sit down in like a pancake position with your legs really wide and you work on these stretches, it's kind of a little bit strange for people to see you stretching. So I want to make this the new normal, like make movement and our capability and just broaden that. So it's not just fitness and exercise, but it just entails everything. So I'd like for people to come in. I was talking about belief. I'll go back to that in a second.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when people are coming in, a lot of people don't believe in themselves. They feel like there's a lot of comparison there, I guess. Like, if they've seen us online, there's a lot of comparison, thinking, I can't do a freestanding handstand. I'm not as flexible. I'm not as strong. And we just really encourage people to just understand where they're at and just to take those first steps, just to come into class. And that confidence will start to build as they start to tick off some of these skills, know where they stand, and actually just start to tick away. They'll start to build that confidence. And then that curiosity that I was talking about before will start to be a part of their practice and also a part of their life as well. So they'll start
Mhm.
to tinker and look at different things that were impossible before or not even part of their consciousness. And they'll look at things and be like, oh, that's actually doable. I can do that now. Or I can actually have a go and be like accepting of the failure as well, like accepting that they're going to do something, they're going to fail, and they're going to, be able to just pick it up and just keep going until they, reach the goals that they're looking for.
I love that. I mean, I think that is such a good application to life. I've always felt like sports in so many ways, like teaches us how to be better business people. Clearly, it is woven in your business, but also just better humans. And I think something is like a safe environment where we all can be playful. And to your point, fail, but fail in a playful way. And maybe eventually just get it right can really help bridge that connection of those limiting beliefs that I think so many of us have, but do it in a way that's like non-threatening. It's not going to jeopardize your life. Like this is a safe space. And then who knows, maybe you can go apply that to your career. I bet the kids have so much fun in doing what you're doing because there's probably less maybe bad habits or barriers you got to break down. I mean, what little kid doesn't want to like crawl like a lizard on the ground and like do some
That's
fun
right.
stuff?
The kids program's slightly different. So the adults is quite structured, but then there's play and I guess a little bit of chaos thrown in there as well. So we do have a
Yeah.
structured program, but then we like people to play and to fail. There's all these progressions that we lay out for the adults, and it's like, you start here. Once you reach this level, you move to the next one, and there's like infinite progression. So it doesn't matter how old you are, who you are, what your background is, what your strength is. There's always a progression for you to start, and you can work your way through. So I think that's really important to have that structure. But the kids program has the structure, but there's also a bigger element of the games and the
Yeah.
playfulness. So there's a game at the start, some structure through the middle, and then a game at the end to make sure that they're starting on a good note. Because kids, they
Yeah.
want to play, they want to move, and some of them don't want to listen so much. They just want to be in it, and I really see the value in that as well, even for adults. Just to get in there and just to move, just to feel it, to experience it, to embody, rather than looking at the finer details. The finer details are handy and can come in later when we're looking at harder progressions and things like that. But I think in general, just getting people moving and having fun with it is our biggest message and something that we offer in the classes. And it makes it
No,
really
that's
sustainable too. If, like, a lot
yeah.
of people come
Well,
to us, yeah,
Well, I wanted to focus on your background once again because I feel like so much of who you are is, and I think for most entrepreneurs, we're a representation of the businesses we build in a lot of ways. And clearly, this is a passion of yours. You do it with your wife. I'm sure your kids in there all the time, and I'm sure a lot of these people are your friends. So I think that's a nice segue into really starting to take a deeper dive into you specifically. And so, sort of the format we run here is really taking a look. I know you've got a lot of great habits, so I'm going to challenge you to compress it down to one that you really feel like is serving you the best at this stage of your life. And so, we'll start with habit, and then we'll kind of flip over to a mindset here. But when you think of habits, is there one that at this stage in your life serves your mental health, your well being, your success more so than any other? Is there one that really stands out for you?
I think you already guessed it. You said there was a large percentage of people saying move every day. And I would love to have a different one. And I know that there is more. I feel like if I was to narrow it down and really think about it and feel through it, it would be this one. It's moving every single day. It's just so important to me, for my career, for my development, for my mindset, for my emotions, for my spirit, everything. It hits all the different layers. And I know that this is true because when I don't move, I feel way different. If I get up in the
Mm,
morning and say if I got a day where I'm just teaching and I'm on the computer and I'm doing emails and all this kind of stuff, this stuff doesn't light me up, by the way. I would much rather be out on the floor,
yeah.
teaching and sharing and moving. And I just feel my energy start to drop. My mood changes. There's certain parts of me that come up. There's like frustration, maybe a little bit of anger, a little bit of restlessness, a little bit of, yeah, all these things are coming up. And I find that if I'm able to put that down and go and move my body in any way. It doesn't have to be a structured or long session. Even just, just moving my spine or just, moving around, I
Yeah.
can feel so much better in terms of my mood is just like instantly increased. And then I've got more energy to do those other things. So I make a point of moving every single day. And I really like this idea of doing what you can. I've got this idea at TMC. It's called do your best. And I was chatting with someone the other week and they had just finished up, I think they stopped training for about 5 weeks. And what they said was, I've got all or nothing approach. I'm all or nothing, they said. So it
Mm,
was very
mm, tough one.
definite and I guess too extreme in my view. So it's great when you're all in, and there's definitely times in our life, in our business, and in our training that we need to go all in. When you're playing poker, you've got the best hand, you're going to win, you go all in, right? But then when you look at the other end, if it's that or do nothing, this guy didn't train for 5 weeks, so he had zero gains and probably lost a lot in that time. So what we tried to have a look at is like this middle way. Is like, can we flow through this sort of middle way, and when we're feeling really energized, go 100%, and then the next day we're feeling a little bit lethargic, we didn't sleep so well. I've got a 1-year-old son and he wakes up sometimes 12 times per night and he's up for hours and things like that. So sometimes I don't sleep so well and I can only give, say, 30%. But on that day, that's all I can do. And I think that's better than nothing. So, what we really encourage people to do is just show up and do their best. And that can look like anything without judgment of yourself, without feeling like judgment's coming from external as well, because everyone's just here doing their best. So, it's the acceptance of that and knowing that life has got its ups and downs and we just got to keep flowing with it.
Yeah, that was such a thorough answer. There's usually like a series of questions I ask of like, "Well, what if you don't do it? How does that make you feel? And what do you do? What do you do in your movement?" You crushed a lot of that. I remember Abby DeGraff, who I think very fondly. She's a fitness trainer out of Madison, Wisconsin, in the U.S. One of her mindsets was progress, not perfection.
Yeah.
And so it's just the concept of like, oh, so many people have this all or nothing. I even fall prey to it. I think I might even be in a rut myself at sometimes with the standard. I'm like, there's so much to do. Like, where do I go today? And it's like sometimes you're just like, it's overwhelming. It's so much, but just making those little incremental moves is really important.
Yeah.
I'm curious for your movement though. When you say daily movement, and correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, are you a runner? Do you do biking, or is when you think of movement, is it very much all the stuff we see online with you in your gym, moving in that way? Because you're in phenomenal shape, and I just can't help is like either you eat incredibly well or you're moving. Like I'm just curious, like does your movement involve any, I guess, like quote unquote traditional exercises, or is it all more intuitive body movements, very much like we might see at TMC?
So I wouldn't say that I'm a runner, but we did the City to Surf race in Sydney. It's a 14K race, and I have run before, but I don't. It's not a part of my daily practice. And I guess if we were to look at movement, like the best way to look at it is like this big umbrella term that encapsulates everything. So
Yeah.
all sorts of sports, martial arts, gymnastics, calisthenics, you name it, anything to do with the body can be put under this umbrella. And if you have a look at a bunch of movement gyms and schools and teachers across the world, everyone's sort of pulling from those different areas, but it looks kind of a little bit different for everybody. So it really depends on what lights you up. And for me at the moment, I practice a lot of handstands. I'm increasing my mobility, working on my splits. I am doing acrobatics and flow work. So acrobatics and flow is kind of taken from, I guess, like Taekwondo, capoeira and contemporary dance. It's kind of like this mold of all these different things together where you're flowing continually on the ground, doing flips and tricks and that kind of stuff. So that's really a big passion of mine. And also the strength work, so the gymnastic strength. So I use the rings a lot, use a little bit of weight, mostly to assist in my mobility work. So I'm not doing a lot of like heavy back squats, deadlifts sometimes. So I guess that's the more traditional type stuff. I've just started to work on my one arm chin. So I'm working on like bicep curls and close grip chins and rows and that kind of stuff. Yeah, so it's always changing and flowing as well. Like something recently that I've added into the practice is bow staff and fire spinning. And with that
Hmm.
came lightsaber spinning as well, which was
I
really
was
fun.
gonna ask you, I was gonna mention it at one point. I was like, I swear I've seen you like twirling around a lightsaber at one point. So that
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense.
And if I think about it, it's changed so much. Like over the years, it was very just gymnastic strength orientated, and I guess you'd look at it as
Yeah.
like calisthenics. And then over the years, it's like again we're pulling different things in that really light me up because that's the main thing. Is like if you can keep it interesting, then it becomes
Yeah.
sustainable. If you feel like you're stepping into the gym each day and you're like really just bummed out that you're in there, I'm so excited when I get the opportunity to move, especially if it's a big long session. I can spend like 3 hours doing my handstands, my mobility, and all these different things. I'm so lit up by that, and I just want to keep coming back and back and back. But I know that if I'm doing things, there is definitely things with inside the practice. It's like working on the weakness. So it's
Mhm.
having a look at our strengths and working towards our strength as well. But looking at the weak areas of our body in terms of our mobility, our strength, our stability. Maybe some areas feel a little bit tight and weak, and how do we bring those areas up so we can create this kind of alignment of the body or balance. And if we working too hard on one thing and some things are suffering and we're getting injured, we need to make sure we're looking at those areas to bring them up. So, in general, I guess the movement practice is looking at all these different elements, bringing them in, and creating something that you really love. And at the moment, they're the things that I really love. Yeah, I don't really love
Yeah.
running so much. I did that 14K run and it felt like a bit of a slog for me to run, but I do like the idea of sprints and I do, run sometimes, but I wouldn't say that it's a part of my daily practice.
No, no, no. I'm glad you actually mentioned it several different times. I'm going to do a couple posts on daily movement coming up, and the thing I hear more often than not about movement is find something you enjoy.
Mhm.
Like I'm a runner. I like that. I'm not big on going to the gym. Other people are walkers. I mean, go play frisbee with your kid if that's what gets you off. You know what I mean? Like, the beauty I think of movement is, I mean, it's stretching, it's yoga, it's Pilates, it's mountain bike. I mean, there's so many different variations of it. And I think you nailed it. Is like you just gotta find something you like, and if it's one thing, that's great. I'm a runner. I've run for 20 years. That's sort of my jam. Other people are like, I'd be bored out of my mind if all I did was run, and I need more variety. That's wonderful as well. And so I think it's just about finding that thing that, yeah, you enjoy doing. For you and your movement practice, I guess getting a little bit more in the weeds, does it have to be for a certain duration of time? Is there a certain time of day? Um, because I know for me with running, my wife was asking me, she's like, "Can't you just go for like a 6 mile run?" And I'm like, it's really not about the distance. It's about how much time I'm out in nature. Like I feel like I need 75 minutes of running more just because of the time to like detox. Like anything less than an hour just doesn't do it enough for me. Like I want to be out there for an hour and 15, maybe a 2 hour run like that. I thoroughly enjoy. The distance is somewhat irrelevant, but I'm curious for you, time of day, amount of time, do those things play into the way you think about your daily movement?
I think that comes into what we're talking about before about being adaptable and having this idea or this plan is great and having the structure. But then if the plan changes, is that you don't show up for the session because you can't do the 2 hours that you've planned, or is it
Mm,
you just go and do what
yeah.
you can? So I really think that that's important, but I do block out time and it's a little bit all over shop depending on when I'm teaching, depending on when I've got my son. So it really doesn't happen at the same time every day. Definitely before I was a dad, it was a little bit more structured and I would teach in the morning and then I'll do my session after that. And I do things outside of the gym as well. Like I go spearfishing, I'm just getting into archery and bow hunting,
Mm.
um, surfing, like so many different things outside the gym as well. I've just started to play golf again. So I just look at my schedule and, maybe there's a 2 hour block or a 3 hour block that I can kind of put something in. I like to train, yeah, as often as I can. And maybe that looks like a 20-minute session or maybe it's a 4 hour session. Like yesterday, I went to the park and I was filming some videos, doing some handstands, doing some acrobatic work. And I was there for maybe like an hour and a half. And I just kind of feel through it. And I know when enough's enough and I can just sort of walk away from it.
Yeah. Did this change at all during COVID? Like, because I know some locations, like, they weren't allowed to go outside, and, I mean, we were fortunate enough in Sonoma County where we live, like, I mean, I don't even see anybody, so running was, like, irrelevant, but did your movement practice change at all, like, with some of the restrictions that were put into place?
Yeah, the only thing that changed for me is like we couldn't come into the gym. So we
Okay.
got someone to build a build a rack out the back. So we had like a pull-up bar basically, and we set up our ring. So we're just training at home in our backyard because there was just
Okay.
restrictions on how long you could be outside for and things like that. I was still doing all the things, and that's the beauty of it. We didn't really need much equipment. Like I don't need much equipment to do handstands, to do mobility, and to do the body weight strength work that I do. So I think that's another plus for body weight training or calisthenics, that you don't really need too much. You can just use your body and find a way to build muscle, to get fit, to develop your body, develop skills is another thing as well that I haven't really mentioned today. But one thing that we really work on is this skill acquisition. And that's probably something that really sets us apart from traditional training, where you're just working on the body. You're just looking at specific muscles. You go in and you look at the biceps and the chest and the back, and you try to build those areas. We're not looking at that so much. We're looking at the skill acquisition, like what skill are we working towards and what do we need to develop with inside of our body, with inside of our practice to attain that skill. So it
Mm,
could be mobility. There's always a component of mobility and strength. Then there's also the skill component as well, like understanding how to organize your body, how to articulate, how to move in a way that allows you to perform that movement, whether it be a muscle up on the rings or a shoulder press or a backflip or whatever it is. There's always these different components that we build up, and that leads to you having the skill.
I want to ask one more question on this before we flip over to a mindset. I don't know, as you were talking, and it made me think of a comment you made earlier where something can be frustrating. And I can just imagine, I've got your Instagram page over here. I was watching a few of them. I'm like, that would be really frustrating for me to do. And I can't help but think, whether it's a new member or maybe a seasoned member, there's somebody that's trying to do something that is foreign and they're struggling and frustration starts to set in. And I can't the word that's coming to my mind is like breath. Like, and I'm just so curious, like when somebody's getting frustrated, like are you guys like pausing for breath work or like how, because I recognize like if they're too frustrated, they shut down and there's an inability to proceed with that. And so it's almost like inner peace brings outer order in a way that like they have to find a way to like relax and just accept that they suck at something until they don't. So how do you navigate that moment, either personally or professionally, working with people where you can just visually see they are frustrated with this movement and it is starting to get to a place where it is preventing progress? What do you do?
Yeah, I think using the breath is very important. It's like slowing down, because the frustration is coming from the mind and you're there trying to do a skill that you can't currently perform. So there is probably going to be this element of frustration, but going slow and understanding where you're at and what next step you need to take is really important. And this idea of patience comes into it as well, because I think we've been trained in recent years that we can, click a button and immediately get things, but that's not true for the body.
Mm-mm.
The lesson that I always give people, it's say if they're trying to open up their mobility, say if they can't touch their toes and they're reaching for their toes, and then we start training mobility and it might be quite frustrating for them. They've got to work on this consistently. One thing to remember is, how long have you not been doing this for versus how long have you been practicing this for? And normally it's this huge gap. It's like, oh yeah, I haven't been stretching for 40 years and I've been doing this for 2 weeks. I'm like, okay, cool. Like, look at the ratio of those two things. Slow down, understand that we're working towards it. Celebrating the wins is another thing as well. It's like when you do
Mm-mm.
get a little bit of progress, even if we can take the toe touch as an example. Celebrating the wins, maybe you get a millimeter further, just a little bit further. That is a win. Even actually staying in the same position. So, say if you don't increase, this is kind of comes to this all or nothing approach as well. If you're doing some work and you're not seeing the weight go up or the reps go up, you can still feel better in that position. And this is kind of one thing, like it's like not looking at the numbers so much, but how does it feel in your body? Do you feel more comfortable in this position? Does it feel easier? Like when you first started it, was it a 10 out of 10 pain, discomfort? And now we're doing the same thing. We haven't increased at all, like on paper or a video. It doesn't look like it's changed at all. Like you haven't even progressed a millimeter. but it feels a little bit better. So that's a win. So making sure that
Mm.
they're being conscious of that and becoming aware of how they're feeling in their body, and because that is progress as well. And even staying the same, like not progressing at all, just staying the same is sort of maintenance, we call it. So if you weren't doing anything, if you had that all or nothing approach and you did zero for the next 2 months, you would definitely decline in your health, in your body, in your flexibility, in your strength. And then that means that, things are on this like downward spiral. But if you're working on it and you're staying the same, it means you're doing something and it's maintenance, and you've just plateaued a little bit. And we need to have a look at that, and how can we change the variables? How can we give the body the input that it needs to progress? And we might need to just like look in a different direction. This idea of adaptability comes into it again. It's like, this is not working for us for a period of time. How do we, turn and look the other way and find something else that we can work on? And another example of this is me yesterday. I set a target. I wrote it down here on my notebook. It said 20-second one arm handstand. So I was filming myself, and just for the listeners, 16 seconds is my longest. So it's 4 seconds
Mm.
over my longest ever handstand. And I'm quite inconsistent with my one arms. It's not like this happens every day. It's like weeks and months in between getting personal bests. And I was just like, I'm going to write this down on my notepad and I'm going to do a session and see if I can reach this target. I ended up only getting 10 seconds as my longest. And instead of judging myself and comparing myself to other people that can do 20 seconds, 30 seconds, I accepted it. I was like, cool. What else can I do today? And I started to do some flag work, which is handstand, trying to touch I just posted yesterday on Instagram. You can have a look, trying to touch your toes on the ground. So this huge side flexion. And I actually got in the deepest position that I ever have. So by
Mm.
doing that, by accepting where I was at on that day, my energy levels, it was super windy outside. I'm going to use that as an excuse as well. It blew me over. I just was able to pivot and do something else and have a really solid session and a solid win. And I think that's another thing that we can do, is just do something else that day. If it's not working out for you, you are getting frustrated, think about what else can you do to make your body feel good, to get into a better mindset, to increase your mood, because there's so many different things you can do, and you've chosen that one thing to do and you're getting frustrated with it, but you're just looking at one menu, like you're looking at one page with one thing. And if I was to just look at that one arm handstand and keep going and get really frustrated, then it would be frustrating for me because I'm not reaching that target or that goal. But I'm able to shift and do something that's actually suitable for me on that day and gives me that win and that celebration.
I love that. I think it's so easy for a listener to hear what you just said in the last couple of minutes, and maybe appreciate it, but maybe glaze over it. There's actually so much science behind the way you've described some of that. I'm sure you know a lot of it, but perspective and the way we choose to view certain scenarios, it's almost like it's the story you tell yourself is the story. Like, and so you talked a little bit about like how you shift perspective there, and then also the celebrating of the win. There's a book when I was reading on all habits by BJ Fogg. There's a lot of really good ones, James Clear, Atomic Habits, and all these. And I remember reading BJ Fogg. He's a professor over at Stanford, and his book is called Tiny Habits. And one of the really distinguishing things I remember in his book is making sure to celebrate the wins. And it's the celebration of the wins that sort of solidify the neural pathways as to like you're heading in the right way. So I do think it's like, can you shift your perspective? Maybe you need somebody to help you shift it a little bit, of like, hey, 40 years of not doing this, 2 weeks of, hey, you're making some progress. Or, hey, maybe you're not making progress, but how do you feel? There's progress in that, and learning to celebrate that. I think that's all brilliant. And I actually think that segue was really nice into mindset here. So, sort of in a similar fashion here, Rod, is there a particular mindset that serves you the most at this stage in your life? Your mental health, your well being, your success? Is there one that really stands out to you?
Yeah, I think the biggest one that stands out is, with practice or repetition, anything can be learnt. And if I take that mindset into business, into my relationships, into my movement practice, or absolutely anything, then I'm able to kind of have a target or a North Star or a goal. And I can understand that I probably need some help, a mentor, someone that can do it. And I always seek those people out. At the moment, I've got movement coaches that are coaching me. I've also got business coaches as well that are helping mentor me. So it's like finding the people that can do what you want to do, but really the mindset of understanding that with practice, because I get in this mindset as well of like thinking, oh, like I really want to chase this, or I want to get to that, or I wish that, future focus kind of thing. Like I wish that I could do this. But then if I slow down and understand that with practice, I can work towards that. So say it's like, I just set anything. It's like I want to be better at speaking on podcasts. And I know that with practice, if I get on 20 podcasts, I'll become better at speaking on these podcasts and be more relaxed and things like that. So it's finding the people that can help you with the goals that you have or these aspirations and starting to tick away and work towards it. So it's really about understanding where you're at, like where you stand, and then what do you need to do to take that first step? Like, do you need to seek some help? Do you need to practice more? And how do you progress? Like with Inside the Movement Collective, we have progressions, and we've got progressions for anyone at any level, at any age to start, and they can understand where they're currently at. We do a session right in the beginning so they can understand where they're at and what to do in class as well. So in a class environment, there'll be people that have trained with us for 8 years. We've got people that have been with us for the whole time we've been open, which is absolutely incredible. But you can imagine the skill level of that person versus someone who hasn't moved for 30 years, stepping into the space, seeing that person. But we still have something for that person that just started today. So it's understanding where you're at, what you need to do in this moment to then progress to work towards the things that you want.
I think I read in your background, you've done jujitsu too, right?
Yeah. Blue belt in
And
jiu-jitsu.
and I don't know if I'm sure there's difference in the way the different studios do it. I remember taking my little guy to jujitsu practice, and what I found really unique about the jujitsu practice we have locally is I got the impression, this is my interpretation, that you didn't start at level 0 when you first went in there as a newbie. It's almost like there's this continuation of sequence of events or moves that people are practicing in there, and I felt like they were somewhat complicated. Like, there was, like, anywhere from, like, I don't know, 10 to, like, 20 different little tiny things you need to do to, like, master the move. And so, my little guy, he gets frustrated so easy, and he's going in there, and it's not like we're starting at, like, I don't know, I think of like level 0 of like, let's just get this one thing right. Like, he's stepping in there on day 1, and then he's being introduced to this move that has 15, 20 different pieces to it, and you could just see the overwhelm on his face as to, like, I mean, he just, like, almost, like, shut down. And obviously I'm trying to teach him very much to your mindset of, like, practice. Like, even if you can only get 3 of them, like, it's just that it's it will eventually, you'll get there. But I think that's a hard thing. And the reason I shared that with jujitsu, with you doing, is I'm curious, like, is there anything that, like, I know this is your mindset and you're probably applying it. You seem like you probably apply this universally across your life, but is there anywhere that that's a struggle for you to apply? I mean, I just think of some of the things I do, and I'm like, I totally get, like, we've all heard the 10,000 hour rule. There's actually even another book on deliberate practice, which is not just 10,000 hours on task. It's actually more of intentionally being conscious of what you're doing to really improve it. So it's not unconscious competence, it's conscious competence. And I really do believe in that. It was sort of an evolution of it. But I also just recognize, like, sometimes it's just easier to say, like, with time, but then there's some things you're just like, damn, that feels like Mandarin Chinese. Like, and so I'm just curious with you, is like, is there anything that, like, you just struggle to embrace that mindset with? Or are you just pretty good at this point that you can just sort of chunk it down and work your way through it?
I guess similar to what I said before, it's being able to articulate. That was a good example of that, stumbling over my words. So I'm really good at embodying things in terms of the physical practice. But I feel like
Yeah.
there's a bit of a lag in terms of like the intellect or being able to articulate it in words. So that's something that I'm working on because I understand it fully with inside my body. And what you're saying before around like the practice of being overwhelmed, it's all like mind stuff. It's like something that's created in your mind and you're overwhelmed. But if you were just to slow down, reduce the variables, like not learn 15 things, just learn one thing and just kind of just
Mhm.
move through the motions and not judge yourself on that. I'm really good at doing that. So embodying
Mm.
those practices where I can just be in something and just practice, practice, practice. So the thing that I'm working on is this articulation, is like putting what I feel and the lessons that I've learned with inside my life, with inside my career, and the ones that I just live day in, day out that are just so solid in my life, learning how to articulate and teach them. And I think that I'm doing a really good job at that. But that's one area of my life that I'm actually working on, because there's certain times, a lot of people have these frameworks and they've got all this structure. And this is again to help the mind understand it. Whereas my thing would be like, don't try to understand it too much with inside the mind, and let's just do it. Let's just action it. And the learning will come from that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Final question I want to ask you here. So much of this episode has been highly focused on you and your business and your habits and your mindsets. And, I think I've even shared with you when I was first building the standard, like so much of what I'm trying to do is show that we're all connected. Like, I don't care who you are. I don't care your problems, like where you're located, what you look like. We are so much more the same than we are different. And so when you think of habits and mindsets, which obviously have such profound effects on our lives, for better or for worse, let's pretend you've got a magic wand here. Is there one mindset or one habit that if you could wave a wand and all 8 billion human beings could just instantly develop this mindset, develop this habit? But is there one that really stands out to you that would nudge humanity in a more loving and kind direction?
Yeah, I think for me, I did a lot of work a few years ago. I was helping facilitate. It's like men's work, I guess. It was a group of men, and I was helping facilitate, and it's basically inner work. So it's understanding that we're all made up of different parts. It's kind of similar to IFS, internal family systems, and understanding that we've got our mind, we've got our body and our emotions, we've got our gut feeling, our intuition, and we've made up of all these different parts. Most of them are created from the mind. So I think for me, the lesson would be to understand that we're not just one thing. I think that a lot of people get caught in certain emotions, whether it be anger or frustration, and feel like that's their whole being. And in the moment, it can feel like that. If it's in your mind and it's in your body, and you're feeling, say, it's frustration is a good example, and you're really tense, and for you to pause, breathe, like you said before, and it's like having a look from the outside. So seeing it from an outside perspective and seeing actually what's going on, and understanding that you are not just that one thing, that you're made up of multiple dimensions, and being able to look at yourself and understand why you've got those certain behaviors, and start to ask yourself the questions like, why do I feel frustrated right now? Instead of just acting from that place and putting it on other people or putting it on yourself, slowing down and saying, why do I feel like this? Okay, cool. And normally, when you do this work, you see that it's from some sort of past experience that you've developed this frustration, and then it's coming up for you now. But then once you understand that, it's developing the awareness of like, when is this coming up? You will start to notice it in the moment when it's actually coming up. And then over time, once you practice this stuff, you can start to feel it coming up. So it's like almost seeing the future of seeing this thing that's going to be triggering for you, and looking from an outside perspective, and then asking yourself from a higher place than that frustration, and say like, what's actually going on here? Like, how can we develop our character, and how can we act in a way that's both serving us and serving the people around us?
I love that. I've read a number of books, and I find it so interesting at how we are so emotionally driven. Um, it's the whole reason why they say, don't drink and text people. I'm in a business environment in my other company, and I'm like, look, dude, if something rubs you the wrong way in email, like, do not press send on the reply. I mean, sure, type your email, just do not hit send. Give yourself. I coach a lot of people, and I'm usually like, if you feel compelled, type the response, then go do something that makes you happy, exercise, create a 24 to 48-hour break, then go read your email again. And if you really feel like you nailed it, go press send. But yeah, we are so highly emotional. And I think, in a lot of ways, our emotions can highly compromise us as individuals, both on an individual and obviously on a collective level. So I think that's great advice. Where can people go to learn more about you, Rod? Like, where's the right place?
I think I post most of my stuff on Instagram, so Rod J Cooper, and also the Movement Collective page. It's the underscore movement underscore collective. And we've also got a website, themovementcollective.net. We offer online coaching. We've got our classes here in Newcastle. We're doing a bunch of workshops and stuff like that as well. A lot of that stuff stopped during COVID. Now we're starting to get back onto it, because I really want to travel around, like travel the world and teach retreats and workshops and that kind of stuff. So yeah, we're just starting in Australia, and eventually we're going to go international again. Yeah. They're probably
I love it. I can totally see how you could spin this off into a franchise. So my fingers crossed for you that some investors come back to the table and you guys get a chance to break out there. That'd be so cool. I've never seen anything like your studio. I mean, I don't clearly know everything that exists out there, but I'm highly connected to a lot of coaches, and you
Whereabouts
offer a very
do you live?
unique experience out there.
Whereabouts do you live?
I'm in Northern California, so yeah, a little north of San Francisco.
Okay, I'll have a look because there is definitely movement spaces around the world, a few in the States as well that are really high quality. So maybe I can send you a message and get you
Yeah.
onto one of them.
Yeah, I love that. Well, Rod, you've been amazing. Thanks so much for being a guest. I really appreciate it. I really am a big fan of your work. You've been a big supporter of some of the stuff we're doing on the standard. So just thanks for being a guest. I really do appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you for listening to another episode of The Standard. Before we go, click on the link in the show notes of this episode to learn more about today's guest. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with somebody who you think would benefit from it as well.